Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another segment here on Project Purpose. For those of you who are new, we cover topics that relate to mental health, mental wellness, and education on a week-by-week basis. And today's topic of discussion is education. On the conversation on education, I'm going to be talking about the demarcation between intelligence and experience. And this was one of the, I think, pivotal moments in my development journey, because I recognize that as smart as you are, if you don't have the experience to understand how to apply that knowledge and that insight, then you're not going to realize your own full potential. And so one of the first lessons that I learned from one of my first managers when I got into my first career in university, and I think that is the education that does start at home, and I don't know how many of us have development conversations with our parents or focus on development in our childhood or in our adolescence. I remember in our civics class, that's when the concept of goal planning was first introduced to me. And I remember that I was first kind of resistant to the idea that someone was facilitating my setting goals and trying to achieve them, but it became a muscle and a life skill that enabled me to do so much in such a little period of time when I started focusing on my career while also completing my undergraduate degree. So my capacity to time manage, really, I can tie that back to those core fundamentals in that civics class around goal planning and around making sure that we manage our time to accomplish our goals. And so I'm very thankful for that lesson. Madam Brown, if you're watching, thank you so much. I was a very hard student. I wasn't entirely receptive all of the time, but a lot of those lessons did end up coming through. And so where this lesson came to light was when I was doing my first career job outside of university was right before I graduated. I was promoted from the customer service department that I was working in to a product training role, and it was a sales training role. So my objective was not just to impart information and to train, but to have that training translate in performance. So I had to increase the conversion rate of the amount of products that were our products that were sold at the front line when travel agents were selling trips. So the idea was they would put me in this travel agency specifically, and I would provide them the required training to be able to give them the ability, the skill sets to increase the amount of insurance products that they sold with each trip. So that was the objective here. And so I was taking everything I knew from theory, right? I was applying what I understood about communication, about persuasion. I was taking everything that I learned in class to be able to build these training segments to meet my own objectives. So the target goals that were established for me in this specific role. And so I remember I was putting these plans together and I was building out these training roadmaps, and I was just providing the periphery to my manager at the time, who really took a mentorship role at that point in time. And it was interesting because I was really very territorial about my material. I wasn't really all that receptive about input. And there was a stage where the material was great. Everyone was very happy about the training plan that I had built and about the content that I had built. But then we were talking about strategy, we're talking about delivery and building a bit of a change management plan. It wasn't necessarily called change management then, but we recognized that we needed a change management strategy for them to be receptive to the tools that I was trying to impart. And I remember I was looking for books on change management. He wasn't my direct manager, but he was the person who was kind of put in the role to mentor me, because I was about 15 years younger than everyone else in that team. I was quite young and they put me in this role, so he was there to be my coach, to provide some job shadowing. And so he was like, Rochelle, he's like, by way of intellect, there's nothing that I can do. He's like, I'm confident that you're smarter than me in every way, but where I do trump you and where I will continue to trump you professionally is I have experience that you don't. So rather than fight me, if it is the case that I'm trying to help you, leverage my experience, because it is the experience that's going to give you the skills that you need to be successful in this specific arena when it comes to managing people and managing politics and getting buy-in. He's like, that's not something that you're going to read in a book and immediately know how to apply. That's something that is experiential, it's life knowledge. So let me give you that exposure. Let me help guide you in attaining that knowledge so that you don't fall on your face. And I remember I felt stumped, because up until that point, I had always prioritized academic understanding, academic knowledge, academic insight to experience. Because I lived pretty much under a rock, I was fairly sheltered my whole life. A lot of the life that I lived was vicariously in the books that I read, in the movies that I watched, and in the biographies or the journeys that I've experienced from that other people shared. I didn't have a whole lot of life experience stepping into that role, right? Maybe 1 year of living alone for university, but outside of that, a lot of my life was very, very sheltered, and I didn't value life experience, right? I valued academics. I valued, well, if I can learn it in a book, I can apply it without any issue. And I was very confident in my ability to apply something that I learned conceptually, practically. But here in this moment, I recognize recognize that there's another element to it. And I also recognized in that moment, he wasn't asking me to look up to him because of how old he was. Like, he wasn't putting, his argument wasn't about, well, hey, look, we have this age disparity. Like, there's this age disparity between you and all of your colleagues, and we want to help bridge that gap. And it's an impossible gap to bridge, right? Like, at the end of the day, if everyone's 15 years older than me, they're 15 years older than me. Like, there's nothing I can really do about that. But his argument wasn't that. It was about experience. And experience and maturity, they go hand in hand. I feel like they strongly correlate, and experience has nothing to do with age. There are a lot of people who are older than me at that time who might not have had the experiences that I had, who might never have the maturity that I was gaining being in this position as young as I was. But his argument sold me in that I needed the experience that my academics couldn't provide me, right? There's a bridge between academic knowledge and insight and conceptual insight that only experience can bridge. And so his argument was, let me give you the opportunity to learn from my experience. Like, let me impart my wisdom on you to enable you to be successful in this role. And I'm so happy that I listened to him, because that was the catalyst to my career pushing forward in the direction that it took, recognizing that I didn't have to value people because they were older than me. And I actually had a huge issue with that. Regardless, I was really resistant to that rhetoric regardless, but I should respect experience and wisdom. If someone had experience and wisdom that I felt that I could benefit from, like if they were there to impart their years of experience on me to help me make leaps and strides and momentum in my own career, then I should at the very least be receptive to listen to it. And that was when I started to become less territorial about the work that I was creating and much more collaborative. And also that was when I recognized the nature of collaboration, really building something that was impactful for the audience that it was built to support. And so I recognized that while I had a great training program, you can have something great that you build, but if it doesn't translate, and that translation, how things translate well, is something that you learn as an art and science that comes with experience. It was able to translate well, not because of my academic insight, but because I leveraged his experience. And so I want to have this conversation today because experience is something that is hard won, but it's something that you can be very intentional about gaining. And so I recognized in that moment of my career, very early in my 20s, that if I wanted to be able to be in step with my peers, and at that point again, like a minimum 15 years younger than everyone that I was working with, but if I wanted to be in the same league as them, if I wanted to compete with them, then I had to be really very intentional about exposing myself to experiences that enabled me to be on site with them, right? So what they took 15 years to cultivate, I needed to find a way to fast track that by putting myself in high pressure, high intense situations that gave me that experience, or gave me at least peripheral experience that I could leverage to propel my career. And that's what I did, but I didn't just do it. It's something that I continuously do, because at the end of the day, when we are in a job market, we're in a market of people who have varying experiences, and those experiences give them the upper hand on given instances if they leverage that experience accordingly. It's not so much about academics. So academics, I feel, is very important. I'll never not value academic knowledge, but I also recognize that in the realm of work, especially with an environment that's always just constantly changing, there's so many things that are taking place that shift and change the ways of working, that shift and change even the industries and markets that we're working in. And having had so much exposure in so many different industries, I recognize that a lot of why I can be a differentiator in the role that I'm in is because I bring a variety and a diversity of experience that is only a byproduct of myself being intentional about gaining experience. My intentionality is less about the accolades and the status. It's more so about how can I give myself the most exposure to the most variety of experiences so that I can be the differentiator, so that I can be the kind of value add that is very hard to find. And so I want to have that conversation with you today because I feel like a lot of us are waiting to be a specific age to get the kind of success that we hear about, that we romanticize. And I'm here to say it's not about age, it's about experience. And it's about being very intentional and exposing yourself to experiences that are going to help you be a differentiator, that are going to help you to get into rooms that maybe your academics won't be enough to get you in. And again, for those of you who aren't aware, Canada is one of the most educated countries in the world. Like, education is a baseline for anyone in the job market. We all pretty much have an undergraduate degree. A large percentage of us have a master's degree. So your intellect might get you noticed, but it's not going to be the differentiator. A lot of it has to do with emotional intelligence. intelligence, and it has to do also with experience and with the maturity that's only gained with experience, not the maturity that's gained with age. So I'm here to have that conversation with you because I think it's really, really important. Like if you're someone where you're very steady Eddie, like you've done the same thing for 10 years, I mean, kudos to you, but at some point, if you want to be a differentiator in your career, in your industry, in the profession that you're in, you need to diversify a bit. You need to think about, well, how can I tailor my experiences so that I don't look like and sound like everyone who's taken this lane? Like what do I need to do to create value in the way that I contribute? Because the way that I'm contributing is informed by experiences that are not shared. And so that can be experiences that we gain in our professional life, that can be experiences that we gain in coaching sessions, in academic settings, or even in the personal goals and challenges that we take. How do we take all of those nuggets of wisdom and all of the insights that are gained in those non-shared experiences to create value in the environments that we step inside, or create value in the relationships and the communities that we partake in? And so very much an experience junkie. I love experience, and a lot of my goals are about exposure to experience. And I recognize that I still need to make sure that I have a fairly robust foundation by way of academics. Like I need to always be fine-tuning and refining my skills and being aligned to the most up-to-date training that's available if it's in a formal setting. But remember the ratio, and this is a ratio that I never want you to forget. And the ratio is 70-20-10, and that ratio talks about the way that you want to think about learning on a day-to-day basis and on even a monthly, yearly basis, like how you want to be intentional about exposing yourself to learning. And that 70% is experiential education. It's about putting yourself in environments and giving yourself the opportunity to learn things on the ground. And then 20% of that is feedback and coaching, like mentorship conversations and having that accountability factor there. And then 10% is academic. So 10% is the education that we gained formally. And so while I am so happy that my education gave me the foundation to get me into so many doors and have so many conversations, I know that I am where I am, or where I have been in my career, because of the experiences that I made a point to expose myself to. So if you are thinking about, well, what's your next move and how do I bridge the gap between where I am now and where I want to be, the answer to that is experience. Being intentional about the experiences that you give yourself and finding the experiences, curating experiences that will enable you to push further by way of where you want to go and how you want to grow in this life. So that's the topic of conversation for today. Some food for thought for you. If I have piqued your interest, if you want to have more conversations around self-mastery, then I do invite you to check out our website. We do offer live events at least twice a month, every month for the foreseeable future on our website. So definitely be sure to check that out. And of course, we do also believe in leadership at a young age. I think a lot of these soft skills are soft skills that start at home, which is why we have catered a one-of-a-kind program, one of the first of its kind, digital, virtual, and continuous learning environments for children, focusing on cultivating grit, resilience, and perseverance in children with a tailored approach to character development and intellectual development. And so the way that we do it, we set the foundation by focusing on cultivating the skill sets around self-concept, compassion, autonomy, and self-efficacy. So we have those trainings, those parent-child workshops that you can check out as well, giving you the opportunity to plug into a global community of parents who are very interested in cultivating those soft skills within their children. And also the programs for us to think about self-mastery and cultivate a community around understanding ourselves and finding that inner alignment, and then leveraging that inner alignment to make leaps and strides in the choices that we make in our professional and personal life. So if I have piqued your interest, then definitely tune in. And we are so excited to have the opportunity to play a small role in your journey. So with all of that said, if you're here, if you're still watching, then definitely follow us. It does help us out a lot. Leave a like, leave a comment down below, and we look forward to chatting with all of you very soon. We'll talk to you later.